Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Unbridled Equestrian Podcast. In this episode, I am absolutely thrilled to introduce a truly transformative voice in the horse world. If you haven't met or heard of Josh Nichol, let me just paint a picture for you. He is a globally respected horseman who has spent decades pioneering what he calls relational horsemanship. So I like to think of him as a guide who helps us not just train our horses, but actually understand their needs, their movement, and the ways our behavior and our bodies impact them. Josh's approach is all about turning horsemanship into a journey of mutual growth for us and our horses. He believes that mastery starts with our self growth, and really that the horses can act as a mirror to that. So the more we can help ourselves grow, the more we can help our horses as well. And that's what sets Josh apart and made me fall in love with his work. It's not just about techniques, it's really about building a genuine relationship where both horse and human can evolve together. So if you're new to Josh's world, buckle up. This conversation is really going to open your eyes to a whole new way of thinking about horsemanship. And for my audience, I typically see hunters, jumpers, dressage riders, and Josh's work beautifully blends all different genres of riding and really connects to what we as riders and what our horses, regardless of their discipline, ultimately need to succeed. So thanks so much for joining us, Josh. I'm so excited to have you here and have this conversation.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I was
Yeah.
intrigued by what you're doing and your community, and happy to share my work.
Well, thank you. Josh and I first met because I attended one of his clinics to audit. And I mean, probably fortunately for me, when I approached you at the end to express my gratitude, I looked like a complete lunatic. I was wearing about 50 layers and just like bundled up head to toe, as I often am. But I was just so taken with how genuine you were, and
No,
your to help the horses and the humans just shines through so strongly in everything that you do, Josh. And so I would love to hear from your experience and learning and growing up in this industry. How has your horsemanship journey led you to question some of the traditional interpretations of
no,
behavior that we see? And how did you ultimately end up developing your relational horsemanship?
that's a big one.
Yeah, I just like to dive right in.
No, it's good. Well, the person that I am, I guess I care about relationship. I'm not kind of a person who can just live in my own belief and expend other people. I have a thoughtfulness and a desire to understand what it means to communicate well. And my sense of horses. So when I was born and raised, it was in a secluded location up in Northern Ontario, actually. So we were out in the middle of nowhere. We didn't have television, and I spent a lot of time outside. We had horses there, and so much of it was just about being with them. That was kind of a thing. So I didn't really have any even sense of doing stuff to horses. Training wasn't really in my mind. And so you just got a real sense of what it was like to be with them, just their state. So then that was kind of what formed my base. And then when we moved to Alberta, 92, well, training was a big deal. Like Alberta is a hub
Yeah.
of training and discipline and all the different things, which is amazing. And then that just really drew me in. And then you start seeing people are doing things from all different directions. And you watch some people doing things in ways that seem to make horses move in certain ways. Some seem comfortable, some seem not. But I already had this lens of just being with. So now I had a base of kind of thinking about how they were feeling. And then, I got to hang out with some really great people that the very base of my work were very influential on that level of how your horse feels, how your horse is thinking, what's going on inside them. These are all pillars. So then my approach to horses was considering those things. And then slowly, you start trying to work with their minds. And then you realize that their mind is very connected to their bodies. And the way horses' bodies work is that if you're not taking care of their mind, then their bodies work in actually a fully upside down form. And then now you start recognizing that if you consider their mind, then their body becomes very shapeable. And if you do not, and you fight with them mentally, which can sometimes seem like you're fighting with them physically, but that's actually a mind issue where the body's trying to be taken by the mind, you lose the body fully. Between that and then my desire to understand personal growth, relationship, communication, like I dig that stuff, just to recognize that there's ways to do things that can make conversation and growth so easy. And then there's also ways we can get so hung up. And most of the time what we do is we get hung up with our past experiences and also interpretations that we have chosen to take on. That could have been by the people we were raised around. It could be from negative experiences that we've had, but we have actually taken on interpretations about relationships and communication, whether that be people or horses. And where we all struggle is when someone communicates with us, if we hear it through that broken lens, communication growth is done because it's not maybe what they meant, but when we make a judgment, now we can't actually hear what they meant. That was a big piece for me, just for myself in growth. And then when you take that into horses, there's so many times that we actually just think in our minds that the horse is trying to be disrespectful or trying to be bad or trying to get away with things. And that's a very powerful thing because now that's going to decide how you use your pressure. It's going to decide the training techniques you use, the way you use your bits, and it can very much so turn into a very dominance-based approach just simply by your interpretation. So that was a big deal for me. And then my style, the way I look at things is I feel like horses are just trying to get by. They're not humans. They don't think like humans. They are prey animals. So when they get nervous of something and they don't understand, they get scared and then they want to run away. Our judgments of their attempts to run away has been through an emotional lens. And then we make that personal, which then makes us, again, feel justified to use pressure in more dominance-based ways, which can't change unless you change the way you look at it. So that's a massive piece. So then as soon as you start to recognize that, okay, so my horse is struggling, the reason this is happening is there's something going wrong for my horse. And then I talk a lot about needs. A horse has certain needs. And we all know this. If certain needs of ours are not being met in a relationship, it's super hard to feel like you can be present and be open in that space. And horses have that too. They don't have the thinking brain we have. So then when you leave them in a place where they don't feel their needs are met and they're panicky, training is, I don't even think you can. So then, it built my style built around, okay, trying to figure out what their needs are. So if they're not trying to be bad and then they have needs, now what that does is that totally changes your energy because now my perspective has changed. Now my energy is like, okay, well, how can I help you? Rather than stop being bad. And horses, the way I look at it is horses feel frequency more than they feel just the way you're asking questions, like just a question. That's not, they feel a frequency, the vibration you're giving off. So if you've got a grit in your teeth about how you see it, they feel that. And if you have a sense of, I don't want to say empathy, but it's kind of like, it's like, okay, I understand that you're struggling here. How can I help? That frequency establishes the base frame for growth. So then we try to understand what it means to meet their needs mentally and physically. So no matter the discipline, horses don't care about discipline. There's a certain time in training when you got to get really refined in the thing you're going to do. But I would say 90% of people's problems in any industry is primarily because we've made judgments about their mind and we're kind of fighting with them mentally. And then secondly, because of that, now their physical body defends itself against us. And that's where, whether it be bucking, bolting, whatever it is, just being tight and pushing on the bit, it's primarily because they feel defensive. And then now we're having a defensive-based conversation. So my element of horsemanship, which I believe is why it has transitioned across the gradient of discipline, is if we can just take a step back and we can first off recognize what is it that horses need and how they look at life. What are they and what are they not? That kind of frees your mind and energy up to be present in the conversation. And then secondly is how does that impact their bodies? And then what is the base that actually develops a self-carried movement? Like, how is it that horses can actually carry and use their bodies? And the cool part is that you can't actually get a horse to use their body in its pure form until they feel mentally safe. So that's kind of where the whole relational piece came. I sometimes get pigeonholed into, I would say, more of an extreme perspective around horses, but our horses compete. They work with us so that we ranch on them, and I've cowboyed for most of my life. So we live it, but there's a way that we can, it's like, what does it mean to live it well? And that means to have a good relationship. So by being in a better relationship and then by utilizing their bodies correctly, it just, now we have a base for growth. And then as time has gone on, I'm just hoping I'm just getting better all the time. I've actually said that to people in clinics. It's like, if I'm still saying the same thing next year and you haven't seen change in me, don't come back, because it's super important that the people that are mentoring others recognize the need to just keep growing. And that, for me, that just never stops. Like I've actually called myself a horseman's pursuit because that's what it is for me. I never intended to do this. I'm just hunting it. And if you want me to share where I'm at, I'm happy to do that.
I love that. And I feel like that really comes across so strongly when you're teaching and when you're helping people and their horses. Again, I mentioned earlier, you just have this genuine passion, and it's so evident to watch you work that this seems like such a calling.
Mm,
But I was interested to hear you say that you feel like you sometimes get pigeonholed into a more extreme
mhm,
kind of thought process. Because to me, when I found your approach, I was like, thank God, like somebody who is approaching it more diversely and from such a broad perspective,
mhm,
because I feel like you're doing the opposite of pigeonholing anyone, right?
uh-huh,
You're looking at any horse in any discipline, any human at any level. And really, like, how can we connect with these horses to improve the outcome, whatever that is? Even if
right.
it's just you want to have a positive relationship and enjoy spending time with them, or you want to be competing at an upper level in dressage and you really want to have that self carriage be willing and effortless and without tension, or you're going to be going to work cattle. And I think that is one of the huge reasons why people connect so well with your work and what you
Mm,
do. And certainly a huge draw for me. I mean, I've met lots of horsemanship trainers that do great work, and you can certainly see the passion, but I do really feel like you bring such a different quality and caliber to the
mm,
work that you're doing. And I'm sure it probably is connected to the self growth work that you
mm,
are so actively involved in personally. Because, I mean, that's the root of everything. And it's interesting. We just did a podcast around how horses are sort of the mirror to the things that we need to work on in ourselves
mm,
and how much they can really help us. Because we can see where they're carrying tension, but it's often, okay, well, where are we carrying tension and what are we bringing to the table in terms of our interpretation? And I love how much you sort of delve into that. I recently started working with a spiritual coach, and one of the things that she says all the time is, what are you making it mean? And so I've started looking through that lens.
mm,
And I've looked at it that way with horses and riders because so often we are totally misinterpreting the behavior and we're making it about us. We're making it disrespectful towards us, or we're making it that they're being bad, that they're somehow making a conscious choice not to do what we want them to do, as opposed to it being maybe it's the way we're showing up, or maybe it's a knowledge gap, or maybe it's a needs gap. And seeing how you tie all of that together to really advocate for the horses, which ultimately ends up benefiting everybody, I think is
mhm.
just so beautiful.
I think there's kind of a scale of growth, and at the very beginning, generally, we live in very defensive mindsets, and you see that quite a bit in the whole world, really. In the horse world, if we're in the horse world enough, you see it a lot. But this idea that everything is defensive and we're in these very guarded positions, and that's a real challenge in horses because we're already there in our own growth. We're kind of just trying to survive. So then when you take all that charge and you have then perspectives around horses that way, man, it sure can create a lot of conflict. And that in itself it's a big deal. From that, you see people move up into a place where it's like, okay, now they realize what they don't want. So then they get really polarized and it's like, no, I'm never going to do that. And I'm always going to live over here. But that's still negatively charged because you're
Mhm.
not just finding clean lines, you're actually motivated by negatives still, which will restrict your growth because now you have rules that are negatively based. I will never
Mhm.
use this. I will never do that. So now you have to try to figure out how to find truth, but around these distinctly negative pillars. And then from that, I feel like what it is you end up having to kind of turn loose to just trying to find the truth. Like recognize that the things you were charged by, you saw as something negative. That's really good that you found that. And so then what I look at it as is there's these, I call them threads, but there's these threads of feel. And another thing that I've called it is like the Holy Spirit of horses. It's like this pull or this sense that you kind of have like, what does it come from? I don't really know, but we have a sense that it's like, something doesn't feel right or something feels so good. It's like sometimes horses just move a certain way and it feels so good. And
Mhm.
sometimes horse connects with us and it feels really good. And it's like, why? Why does that happen? But I feel like there's this thread. And when you can start following those threads, and I would say this has been one of my biggest leads. And I've said this many times, is like, I don't actually care to be right or wrong. I don't have any ego attached to my opinions. I just want to know more. And if something changes in my world and the horses are to show me something that is better and contradicts something that I do, I'm happy to change it. And I'll say it like on a platform. I don't care because the horses know. And then really anybody who knows anything also knows. So it's like, who are you impressing? Right. So then by following those threads, and you can feel that in their mind and in their body, you can learn so much about growing And that's really the horsemanship piece for me. So I really love dressage. I like classical dressage. I spent a bunch of time kind of in that space. I also like bridle horses. I love the art. And I think that's what I would say is that I love art. I love paintings. I love watching anybody. That's what's so cool about the Olympics. That just ended. And you get to see people that spend their whole life perfecting going down a bobsled or what easy, right? But it's art now, and that's beautiful. But the thread is what guides me with the horses, and they will continue to show you more and more where the mind is right, like what works for them mentally, and then what works for them physically, and then what empowers them. And that to me would be my three pillars in training. It's like the leadership side is knowing what they need to feel safe, what would allow them to draw to you, to look to you. How does their body need to move to honor soundness and athleticism? Those are both really important pillars. So I
Mhm.
look through that lens. Like if the way I'm asking them to move doesn't necessarily support correct musculature to develop soundness and longevity, I'm kind of looking for, generally there won't be a smooth line. And then the
Mm.
third, resilience. Like horses need to be empowered. They are creatures that their X is not found in a sheltered environment. So we have to actually learn, and it's no different for us. If we just back away to keep our worlds okay, then what happens is you're actually allowing the negativities to close in on you because your world will just keep getting smaller. So I always say, yeah, back away to regroup, but then you need to allow your skills to actually help you to take ground so that you can go out there, live your life and live your dreams and fulfill the other parts of your soul, because very few of us think about just sitting quiet. A lot of our soul actually then blends into like running across a green field, your arms out, and just that kind of like hair in the wind feel, like something big. I don't know. It sounds cheesy, I guess, but there's that piece. And so then part of the work is how do you then help horses become empowered? And that liberates horses. Now you're actually offering horses something they didn't come with because they
Mhm.
generally run first. Their first thought is not to, challenge things and whatnot. I love that about really good horsemanship because you give horses something that they can't have without us. And then we get something from them that we can't have without them. But isn't that kind of what good relationship is?
Absolutely. And the way that those two things meld together, like that's the magic of horsemanship. And I think that's what subconsciously draws so many people to horses. There's that magnetism about it. But I feel like sometimes we go into more of the selfish or negative side of things and in terms of what we can get from them
Mm,
instead of what we can give to them. And so I
mhm,
loved that focus in your work and how can we encourage them and empower them to be their best so
mhm,
that ultimately we get this really cool dynamic that plays back and forth where they can borrow courage or
mhm.
whatever they need from us and that we can get whatever they have to give in return and it can be this really symbiotic relationship. I
Yeah.
think that's so fabulous.
Well, it's something that I look for in my life, and it's actually a big deal is that we often think that our job is to take away what's challenging to a horse. Like if they're being challenged and bothered, and like we need to take that away. And you hear a lot of times people are talking about. I mean, it seems very righteous to think like, no, it's my job to. I need to make it better for my horse. I need to up my own level. And it can be talked about even when we're talking about the mirroring where we can see ourselves in our horses, like that it's always me. And
Mhm.
I think there's a big level that is me, but there's also a level that is a horse and a horse's nature. And yes, we have to be the lead in that because they're not going to come up with the ideas to do the things that we want. But I have this thing that I look at. It's called embracing your hard. And every creature is going to have a hard. And if you try to take away the hard of another creature, now you've just doubled your own hard. So I see that in that's if you just think about that in relationship, right? And what happens is now it's an unequal, you're not both pulling with each other because now you've tried to make it easier. So it always seems really good to kind of like, no, I have to do the work. And if I do the work, my horse will figure it out. And I want to make life easier for my horse. But every time you make their life easier, you're taking on the yoke of their hard. So part of the work, it's I want to learn how to live my life in a way where what is hard, I have mindset for. I have empowerment for because when your work actually allows you to engage your life in a new way, that's what changes it. So what I have it in my mind is like I'm not taking my horse's heart away. I'm not going to remove that hard, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to empower them to have a different way of handling what's hard. And then what happens is now you have a horse that can hold space for you as well. And that's such a big deal to me. So this whole thing about we're not here to take away the heart of other creatures because then you just overload yours. And I see this with some people, man. The amount that they do and then their horse doesn't give hardly anything back in return now. Like they can't do much with them, but they're constantly doing so much. I really like that sense of what does it mean to be in a relationship with empowerment? I want to do things in such a way where my life expands. And so there's a thread around that too. Like there's a thread that some philosophy, if we're not careful, the philosophy sounds really good, but if it's disempowering you, then it's an incomplete thought. It's like an incomplete
Mm.
step, because all beautiful, deep-rooted philosophies around relationship, horses and people should finish with an empowering element that grows your life and expands you, right? To chase why you're on the earth. And I can get pretty philosophical, but just rooted in expansion and not contraction.
I love a good deep philosophical chat. So I feel like I could go down those rabbit holes with you all day long. And perhaps we can do that on another episode if you'll be kind enough to join us again. It's so interesting as you're describing that. I'm thinking, oh, it's no different than a romantic partnership where one person is carrying the load for the other.
Sure.
And if we're not really working together in partnership, it's not true partnership.
Mhm. Totally.
It's one person carrying everything and
Mhm.
then usually having animosity towards the other. When often within that dynamic, we haven't created the space for it to be more of a mutual partnership.
I would say that most of the breakdown of relationship with, and I love to look at universal perspectives, because the sense of the earth is there's pretty consistency in truth of, based on relationship,
Mm.
and that's going to be a breakdown. So it seems really good, and I would say that's a bit of a theme in the horse world. It's like, you're worried, I'm gonna make your life smaller. I'm gonna make things smaller. I'm gonna break it down. I'll take the load. And then slowly you get to a place where the horse now won't leave the yard, or they won't get on the horse trailer, or they won't, because they've actually become disempowered. So again, in relationship, no, I'll just keep taking it on and taking it on and taking it on. And if that is an uneven balance, yeah, it will turn into bitterness. It will turn into, so it's like these seemingly righteous ideas, that the most righteous ideas actually will create an empowered balance in a relationship. And they're often a little harder up front. And I always say that if I'm trading quiet now, I'm
Mm.
trading empowerment later, usually. Because quiet now would mean it's like, well, I don't really want to talk about that because it might be a little bit harder to talk about. It's like, so then we don't talk about it. We don't talk about it. And we don't talk about it. So now we're going to be disempowered. So I traded to make something quiet now. I trade empowerment later. And what I want, it's like, no, let's just talk about it. Like it might be hard
Mm.
to talk about, but I would way prefer us sort it out and figure out those details so that we can feel like we have a strong front. And it's the same with the horses, man. Like how can we be considerate of where they're at, meet their needs, have those conversations, but do it in such a way where they feel strong. You have a sense of power and you're on the same front going forward. And like you could you could interchange what I just said with people and horses and dogs and life and self, and because it is all the same. And I think that's been the cool
Mhm.
thread of personal growth. That kind of inspires you to personal growth, because it's like, I want to know what my horse has to deal with, but I also want to know what my wife has to deal with. Like that's a serious thing. And the more I go into kind of searching things out for myself, it just makes me better on every level. Again, because primarily all things resonate with what you give off, and the amount of work you've done or haven't done changes what you're giving off. So then it changes the amount you can receive back because of what you can create around you. And so it's just never, it will never do anyone a disservice for any of us to do any of our own work. Like every time you
Mm.
do work, you make everything around you better. Even if sometimes it seems a little harder in moments, because a lot of times people do work and then that makes you want to have conversations maybe you weren't having before. So sometimes people, it's like, oh, it's like getting harder. Well, not really. You're just now having a voice, or you're speaking up. And I think that's actually a cool thing with horses, because, you know, communicating about their needs, mind, space, and pressure. Those are the three pillars that I talk about when it comes to horses' needs. Those are the things they have to sort out. Having conversations about that, I always say that it's like, I want to have conversations with mind, space, and pressure when they're not in any kind of an anxious state, because then what we can do is we can actually set the narrative. So if you want to talk about your problems with someone, but you want to do that once everybody's all bothered, that's not going to work very well. So you actually want to have that narrative, that conversation when everybody's good, and then you can figure out what's enough pressure and what's too much. And that's something I do with my horses. We talk about empowered by pressure all the time. I want my horses to understand how to control pressure by feeling like they can lean into it. And I don't mean like lean on me, but they can understand it. So I guess I can just share the need piece a bit, but
Yeah.
the mind need for a horse is, what do I do with my world? Like, what happens in my world? Who's taking care of all these things I see? And where's my herd? Like, so a horse that's a more mind need, they're very looky and they can be herd bound, but they really, when you talk to them, you have to make sure the primary essence of your question, whether it's your leg, your hand, the lead rope, the bridle, that you see a change in their thought first. So they know you're talking to what they're looking at. But if you just move a mind horse's body around and you don't talk to their mind will stay controlled by their anxieties, because you haven't allowed your energy to kind of get into that system to say, I know you see that, and here's another way to deal with that. I know I can see that too, and here's another way to deal with it. So mind horses need us to be able to change their thought, but then give them a different energy to feel about it. The space need is probably one of the most confused needs, because space horses need to feel you. It just so happens that most people are very closed off energetically, because a lot of life ends up happening is when we have a space horse that engages us, if we're closed off, now they have to get very close to us to feel us. And if they can't, it makes them agitated. And so that's where nipping and biting. So space horses can often pin their ears and nip and bite and do all those things. And it's so then we say that's disrespect and they're being bad. But really, that space need was so uncommunicated that they were becoming dysregulated because of that lack of peace. So space horses need to feel you, and then you need to get outside your body. Wow, most of us just don't. And the only time we get outside our body is when we're mad. And then and then the energy moves. So part of your own personal growth is to get to a place where you can do your own work, and then you can get your energy so that you actually have access to your energy. Most people don't have access to their own energy because it's all tied up in their trauma. It's all stored up. And then, boy, you touch someone's trauma and you'll see energy. But if you can do your own work, it actually liberates your own energy. So now you can just use it in communication. So then space horses just need to feel your energy. They need to feel it. So then I will move into horses and see if they can move. But I'm trying to create receiving state, not obedience. And receiving state means that you step in until you can kind of feel them receive it. So they're responsive, but they're not scared. That piece got me into my own personal growth like crazy, because it's like, okay, well, this horse is so close and I keep getting upset and I can't feel my own space. It's like, so there's all these pieces, and then you start doing work and you're like, holy smokes, I have more available to me now. And then horses start responding, and then you just step into the space with a certain horse and it's like they start to chill just because of your presence. And so you start recognizing the value of doing your own work and how that creates more asset. And space horses are huge for this. And then pressure horses are the ones that they get scared. They see stuff and they're scared of it. They're very pressure sensitive. And what a lot of times people think is that horses are scared of pressure, and they're not actually scared of pressure. They just need to know how to control it. And the thing that happens for us is they learn to control it by running, and that's their natural inclination. But what we need to help them understand is how to control it by being in relationships. So the two releases of pressure are when their thoughts come to us. So when you apply a pressure that they can connect with you. And then secondly, when you can feel them internally soften. And then what happens is now we kind of create this negotiation where they can still control pressure, but they can do it in a way that brings peace to the horses, and then it satisfies us. So anyways, this need thing in its own right, on one level, asks us to step into our own space to be our better selves, so that we can actually give off better vibrations to a horse by what charges us and what amplifies our emotions and what brings us calm. And so we can interact in that, but then also bring a horse peace. And the big controlling factor is that when a horse finds peace, they actually release their body to the training. So I don't know, maybe it's an extreme amount, but I'd say 80% of training problems are nothing to do with the discipline you're working on. It has to do with your interpretation, and then your ability to understand why a horse was doing what they're doing. And if you do not take care of why they did it, the what will never change. Like they can't, right? Like the behavior is happening because of something else. So if you try to fix behaviors, it's a futile approach. So then, yeah, I've just found over and over and over again, like I don't even know how many horses I've worked now. But you generally find this, you see a behavior and then you figure out what need, like if you can look at it through the lens of a need, like what that behavior, okay, were they reacting to a pressure? Are they trying to figure out where their buddies are? Are they engaging your space? Usually it's one of those three. And then you go ahead and find and talk to that need. All of a sudden it's like, now it's totally different. And then all of a sudden the behavior changes. And that's always what I'm looking for. I'm not looking for my own affirmation. I'm looking for an affirmation from the horses that if I get it right, then they change. And that's my lens of affirmation. So yeah, you want and need that feedback. So there's no horses being bad. They're just horses that are giving you feedback that you just didn't like. It's like, I don't like the feedback you're giving me. So then I want to discipline that rather than say, okay, like, thanks for the feedback. And I'm going to keep trying to figure out how I can shape this up to bring you back into a thinking state.
Yeah, and I love how you framed that because so often, like you said, the feedback is uncomfortable for us. None of us likes to hear that what we're doing isn't
Yeah,
working.
that's right.
And it's easier, I think, especially if we are looking at things or responding from a place of our own trauma, to say, oh, well, it's their fault. They're the ones that are in the wrong here, rather than looking at the other dynamics
Mhm.
involved and what needs they might not have met and how we're showing up, because those pieces are massive. Now, Josh, for anybody who's not familiar with your approach or your pillars or these needs, I love when you talk about a pressure horse. What might that look like in real life for somebody? We kind of touched a little bit on the space horse and how they might manifest. Like
Yeah.
they're the ones that are in your space, they're nipping, they're biting, and the behaviors that we might see. What would be some of the things that somebody might be able to gauge if they have a pressure horse?
Mhm.
And what does leaning into that pressure look like? Actually, sorry, I'll continue a little bit there because one of the things that I think really differentiates your work from so many other horsemanship trainers out there is the way you utilize pressure.
Mhm.
And it's not to create this kind of anxiety and fear and movement in the way a lot of horsemanship trainers
Mhm.
do. So
Mhm.
if you could elaborate on that,
Mm.
that'd be great.
Yeah. So pressure horses, like their big manifestation would be spookiness. They feel things and they just get scared of it. So one of the differences between mind horses and pressure horses is that mind horses need to see it. So they'll get nervous of what they can't see. But a pressure horse is actually scared of what they see. So they're going to try to get away from it. So that's where the spookiness will come from. Worried about a flower pot, scared of a rock that now it just looks different, like the shadows on it differently. And they've passed it 100 times, but now they're scared of it. This is the pressure horse attribute. And for me, it's like I always break down the elements. And I think a lot of us think some of the struggles that I recognize some people have is that they actually just look at pressure like it's a thing. I use my stick, I use my flag, and I'm dealing with the behavior. So pressure is not something you reconstruct or think about or break down as a element that a horse has to consider. We just use it. Like I'm just using it or I'm not using it. Like pressure's good or pressure's bad, or I just use it.
Yeah.
And what I'm saying is that pressure's an element in a horse's world that they have to learn how to control. So then it's all a matter of how do you help them control it? And the biggest struggle would be just using pressures with horses. If you just use pressure with a pressure horse, they will get scared of you really quick. And then that's where running off, bolting, they'll just blank out that there's so many different things that they can do. So then you're using your pressure and it's scaring them. And now you need containment because the pressure that you used put them into a place where now they're feeling contained. And so then they're like running off your leg and now they're heavy in your hands and it turns into a kind of a negative circle. The other opposite is where I see a lot of people end up going, where it's that now you don't want to use any pressure at all because you've seen what pressure can do. So it's still a linear concept. Pressure is still a negative thing. And now we're just not going to use it. And so then what happens is when by doing that, you haven't actually helped a horse think differently about pressure. They aren't empowered with it. We're just not using it. But that only works if you can keep pressure from their life, because inside of them, they still have those triggers. We're just trying to keep them from being triggered, which now you've taken all the weight on your shoulders. So you have taken their hard and now you have double hard and they don't have any. And if the hard goes back on the horses, then they will generally go back to those behaviors. And so then the thing that I'm after is and this is where we talk about more about empowerment by pressure, but like, how can you help a horse understand that they can control pressure? You can give them what they need and they can learn to control it in ways that allow them to feel safe, allow them to not be scared. An example that I've used many times is that we're sitting in a clinic and everybody's sitting around the pen and we're talking and nobody is getting up and jumping in their vehicle and making sure they can still get off the property. It's like, oh, why not? Because there's gates shut. Like maybe you couldn't, but we don't because we know we could. So then I always say that with horses is the more a horse understands how to control pressure in a thoughtful way, the less they're trying to. So that's what brings the body into a place where where they now feel like they can just show up and have a conversation. So good training with a pressure horse can't actually happen until you've helped them understand how to control the elements of pressure in a good relational way. And now they can feel like they can have conversation, because really, what questions is it that we ask our horses that aren't on some level a pressure to them? So I say rewards inspire a horse to try, and the work of pressure is to empower them to understand the things they can't control. Like those are the things that affect their life, because there's going to be outside factors. And so helping them understand how to work with pressure and control pressures in positive ways empowers their world, and reward makes them feel better about trying. And they're both really necessary, but they surely don't contrast each other. Like positive work and negative, like pressure and reward, they sure don't contrast. They speak to different things.
That's such an important distinction. And I really also noticed hearing you speak in your clinics, you make a distinction, and I think it ties in really nicely to what you just spoke about, between this isn't that we're not asking them to do anything, right? It's not that we're suddenly, because I think I see that misconception a lot of the time with people. Well, I can't just do everything that they want, because then I'll never get to do what I want to do.
Right.
They need to work. So
Mhm.
we need to get on with this. But I love how you tie those things together. It's not that we aren't still asking them to do these things. It's that we're empowering them first so that they feel like they want to participate in these things when the time comes. And they're happier then in the work, braver, and feeling like they have some autonomy and some power in the situation, which I think is so important and such a contrast to how we've been approaching horsemanship and riding in general for so long, really from a foundation of fear and power and control over them, as opposed to partnership with them.
Yeah. Well, our lives don't do well, and the horses' lives don't do well when we succumb to the negativity of what pressure's been, both in our own lives and in horses. So like stuff happens and we all get damaged, and horses are the same. So then just not using pressure, it's not the answer. It can still leave us still through a trauma lens. And that's one, again, that to me, that's the greatest gift we can give them. And in my world, it's not. So if you have an animal that you always have to back away from, now they end up taking up so much trauma space. And the more trauma space a creature has, a person or a horse, it becomes a weight now that everyone else has to work around. Okay. And so then, so that again, that comes back down now to now I have to carry their hard. No, they can't go out on trail rides. They can't go out and help. And to me, that just doesn't work in my world. Everybody has to learn how to pull their weight. Everybody has to pull their part of this boat, and we're rowing together. So I don't, and that was another part to it. And if you watch really good horse people, and man, their horses look happy and they're working. So it's not like there's not a way. And if they don't know how to work, that's not a good thing. And if they're not okay while they work, it doesn't mean they shouldn't work. It means we should change the lens that we're using to help them work. And so for me, again, it's like you look at relationship, and if you have a good relationship with someone, it doesn't matter how hard the work is. And if you don't have a good relationship with someone, even a little bit of work can be so frustrating. And that's how I see it with horses. So I want to get to a place where I know that our relationship is good, that enough that we can do hard work together. There's no better feeling. I always say this for myself personally, this is a personal thing, but if I am going to continue teaching and helping people, I will always have 3 different horses. I will have horses I'm starting, which keep me thinking about the base of work. I want to have horses that are kind of farther along, like bridle horses. So I'm always kind of like refining myself and trying to keep remembering what that all feels like. And then I always want to have project horses, a couple of project horses that I'm having to keep myself on the sharp edge of how do I help pull this one off the brink? How do I bring them back? How do I repair what was broken? So there's always those 3 horses. I will have at least one of those always in my barn, to the best of my ability. And it's so rounding for me because it keeps me on the edge. It also consistently creates an appreciation for the things I'm asking other people to do because I'm still doing it. So it keeps kind of empathy at a high level and for the challenge of some of those pieces. But I have a quarter horse gelding that, he came really traumatized. And last week I ended up ponying another horse off of him. And so I was doing all the work off of him. And it was just so neat. He's just kind of right on that brink of he's getting to a place now where he's actually excited to do the work. You could just see him wanting to do it. He's thinking through the pressure, and he wasn't taking it personal and getting scared. And this horse was really scared. Anyway, so I just love that. I want to keep getting to that place.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's so interesting how sometimes we are inclined to baby them
Mm,
and take on their heart as you kind of mentioned. And it just does everybody a disservice because then we feel overwhelmed and burnt
mhm,
out. We're not empowering them. And I think one of the things that I see consistently is we're all meant to do hard things. And we thrive when we're actually pushing ourselves.
mhm,
We're meant to grow. We're meant to be creative as humans. Our brains are meant to be solving problems and coming up with new ideas and
mhm,
doing things.
mhm,
So even if we're inclined sometimes towards, oh, I'm tired and I'd just rather sit around and watch Netflix, for
mhm.
example, oftentimes our brains, our bodies, our nervous systems actually thrive when we are empowered to do harder things. We
100%.
feel good. It fuels us, like you alluded to earlier, like it gives us access to a different level of energy. People
Mhm,
often ask me, like, how do you do so much? And it's like,
mhm,
when you can tune in to that vibration of like, well, it's empowering for me.
mhm,
And if I have it in me and I have the desire, the energy, the resources to do it, why wouldn't I?
mhm,
Right? Because I'm only going to benefit from pushing myself within, obviously, there's always going to be limits, but
mhm,
just like pushing the edge of that limit all the time. And I like how you mention that in your training work with horses too, right? It's not like we're flooding them because I think we
mhm,
see that a lot in horsemanship training sometimes too. But it's like, how can we just move the edge of that comfort zone?
mhm,
And it really just like you can see such massive changes. It's almost like you
mhm,
see these horses come out of their shell
mhm,
and suddenly they're like, I can do it. And
mhm,
it's like watching a kid have that realization. When you watch a horse have that realization that they can,
mhm.
there's just nothing more amazing than that, I feel.
Well, and there it is. I think one of the struggles is we live in an amateur culture, unfortunately. Like most people are just trying to figure it out. There's like the pro idea, and then amateurs are also riding amateur horses, so that makes it even worse. So then we see a lot of kind of like good examples of bad stuff, and then people are defining judging gear based on amateurs using gear, and it's just this big mishmash. But genuinely, we need to be. I've renamed my newsletter and called it the middle ground. It's like that's like we need to be able to get to that middle and not make judgments on polarized extremes, because all that generally does is make you feel better about what you're stuck in. Like if you're stuck and then you look at the other extreme, now it makes you feel pretty justified about where you're sitting. I really like to think about, what is it exactly? What does it mean for me to have mindsets that are actually developing my own empowerment, not me feeling justified with the stuck position that I'm in? And also then it's like horses don't need us to feel bad for them. I think of horses and kids similar in how I want to raise them. And it might feel really good to keep taking the pressure off my kids and not asking much of them right now. But then when they go off into their own world and pressure's always been removed, how are they prepared for it? They're not.
Mm.
So taking a step back is always great, but again, it has to activate some kind of empowerment. So that's exactly what it is with horses. And you said it, and I love that. It's like when we have done something on an empowered level, there's something that stimulates our soul. When we do something hard and we can figure it out and do it, oh my goodness. So it always feels good to take a step back. Like it feels good or it makes us feel safe, but it doesn't make
Mm-hmm.
us thrive. It
Yeah.
doesn't make us, and I want that for myself. Like I don't want to I don't want to just be comfortable, because the feeling of going and doing something hard and doing it well and being able to, that's where life is, man. That expands us. It makes us feel growth. And so then what does it mean to develop and train horses from that perspective, where we're going to try to be super respectful, but we're also going to challenge our boundaries and we're going to ask hard things. But inside of asking those hard things, you can anticipate that I'm going to take care of our relationship in the process of that. Like I'm going to consider you. It's something that I think all the time. One of our greatest anxieties around relationships is that if someone is going to blow up all the time, then you will dance around that and skirt around things and feel anxious anytime pressure comes up. And a lot of people feel that with their horses. And that's actually the definition of an unhealthy relationship. So when you're trying to always back away so they're okay, their trauma or their anxiety is actually controlling the relationship. And the opposite is with those people, when pressure comes up, you start getting nervous. Nothing's even happening yet. And you're already nervous. And a lot of people feel that way with their horses. And the opposite is the people that you're going to feel the safest with are the ones, and things have happened and they've been there for you. And the pressure did not break the relationship. Like they got there with you. And honestly, that's what I want with my horses. And that has inspired my personal growth journey. It's inspired the development of how I train and how I work with horses. And it's like, no, we're still going to ask hard questions, but you can guarantee I'm right here with you. And my goal is for my horse to feel the way you felt when you said that about like, no, everything's about that feeling of empowerment. And the other thing, like one of my favorite quotes is from Frodo Baggins, as silly as it is. And it's like, he said kind of similar. It's not really a good story unless there's a dragon in it. It's like, there's something so good about being able to challenge something and then have conquered it. Like not necessarily conquer it, but get to the other side of something hard. It's so empowering. And I just no greater feeling than watching that in my horses. When something that used to control them no longer controls them, and now they feel more empowered. Like that's life, man. Like that's awesome stuff.
Absolutely. And it's so funny because I think so often, and you mentioned this earlier, like we're closed off in our energy and the world has become such a different place, sort of even in the last 10 to 20 years. Like I grew up in rural Nova Scotia, and so I feel like we talked a little bit about this. That sort of upbringing, I think, really changed the perspective I have on the world. For the better. I'm really grateful that I grew up in a small community where everyone had each other's back and, you were just open and accepted and you did things for others just because it was the right thing to do. And just having that outlook with horses has really helped me so much in my growth journey, but also knowing that I can feel really crappy because I don't know how to solve the problem. I'm disempowered. I'm stuck and I can stay that way. Right. So I can have that hard work of not figuring it out, or I can have the hard work of trying to figure it out. And at least even if I'm failing forward and I'm learning, I'm gaining data, I'm like figuring things out bit by bit. And the cool thing about horses is they don't need us to be perfect. They have no expectation of that whatsoever. They need us to show up authentically. And if they see us just changing things, they're really quick to be like, you're a little different today. I like that. And then they start changing with us. And so it can become this really beautiful dance where, yeah, maybe it's a hard thing that we're learning to challenge our belief systems, the lens that we're looking at things through. Maybe it's really, really hard to have an honest look at what needs they don't have being met. And maybe where our knowledge gaps are. It's that hard work versus the hard work of like banging our head against the wall day after day and not getting where we want to get with our horses, being afraid of them or always feeling like we have to tiptoe. And like you said, the hard work comes with this outcome of empowerment and feeling like, yes, we did it. And it doesn't have to be huge steps. Like we can have tiny, tiny wins that just feel like the best thing in the whole world with our horses. Like when we see them gain confidence from something, it's like, oh, it's such a great feeling versus the other hard work of staying stuck. And again, I just love the way you bring all of that in terms of the internal work and the work with our horses, because yeah, the hard conversations never go away. And in my experience in life, it just gets harder. So if you don't equip yourself or your horse with the tools to deal with those hard things as they come up, you're almost always going to be fighting a losing battle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. I agree. I think that's exactly it. Hard is never going away. And I think the struggle is that for most of us, we've had so much hard, we just want to break. We just want things to stop for a sec. And I think that's where the whole bit about like backing away from things to relax with your horse. It's like, okay, feels like really permissive to be like, it's okay to do that. And then I think that can catch us if we're not careful, where now we think we need to back away from everything. And again, I'm never telling anybody you can't momentarily back away, but it's a regroup and then a reanalysis to figure out what happened there. And then we're going to try to re-navigate that, because exactly that, like the joys of life are in that empowerment to figuring out how we can regroup on that. And again, there's that thread and that Holy Spirit thing again of like the horse. There's something so exciting about, it's like, oh, it worked. That worked. And it's like, it feels good now and something's good. And there's that thread and you just kind of follow those things. Right. And as much as it generally feels good to back away, it actually generally, if you really think about it on a soul level, backing away feels good. Reconnecting feels good, but it doesn't necessarily feel empowering because you haven't actually conquered the thing that caused you to have to back away. And so then it's a little bit imprisoning if we're not careful. So I always say if a horse is dysregulating, absolutely back away every single time. Your horse is not trying to be bad. They dysregulated. Maybe it was my inspiration that caused that. I did something and now they dysregulated. Back away and regroup. But also learn from it to figure out, okay, what was it that happened there? Why did they do that? What was it pressure? Was it because I took them too far away from their buddies too fast? What was the thing? So nothing is ever a fail. And if you can just really keep a good mindset around it and stay accountable for your own stuff, like if you overload on a horse and that's a you thing, that's not a horse thing. So then, and that's where I feel like horses are so good. If I can take accountability and it's like I walk back in that, and especially even in a relationship, like if I overdo it, then and I say, hey, I'm sorry, that was my fault. Hardly ever does that not go well. That I can take a self accountability and stop putting it on them. And then you just regroup on it and then try again. But the power is kind of staying in the game. It's like staying in that a little bit to just keep working and jostling. And I talk about green, yellow, red, and gold as kind of the framework of growth. And green is where they're totally regulated and you develop good connected understanding. Yellow is where you're pushed. You're not necessarily not thinking anymore, but you're being challenged. Red is where you're dysregulated, and gold is above all this, where it's like you've used skills to get past it. So the goal is when you can use green concepts inside the yellow, that's when you transcend to gold and self-preservation no longer controls you. And that's what I'm after that all the time in myself. I know those little threads where I can feel myself wanting to shrink back. And it's like, how can I use my skill? What skills can I use right now to not let this run me? I don't want to be run by this moment. And then if you can use your skills, man, that thread, it just illuminates and you feel like you just won the Olympics because it just feels like you've just been, released from the control of it. And I don't know. I just want that for everything. I want that with my horses. I want that in relationships. I want it for myself. And that's what makes life delicious. Like it makes it really good because now you're not controlled. And there's that saying, right? To be fully connected, but fully disconnected, that I'm fully connected to myself and I'm not connected to the things that are happening around me. I can just be present. And that's what I want for my horses.
Yeah, absolutely. So well said, Josh. And I know we have to wrap up shortly here, but I just want to thank you so, so much again for coming and sharing this incredible work that you're doing. And I really hope that we can have you on again and dig even further into some of these concepts and some of the work that you're doing because it's just incredible. And I think exactly the threads that so many of us could benefit from following in our lives, interpersonally and with our horses. So thanks again. And now for anybody who is not familiar, where can they find you, Josh?
Yeah, variety of ways. I'm clinicking all the time. So you can look on my website, joshnichol.com. There's lots of resources on there, lots of articles we've done. YouTube is also another free source of content. We're on there at different levels. Sometimes we're putting new stuff constantly and other times we're not, but there's lots of content on there. And then membership site is a place we've been putting content for about 8 years, and we try to be very regular to stay connected with people and help them grow. And then I guess social media, but that's, without saying.
Fabulous. Yeah, and you have so much great content out there right now. So for anybody who's interested in learning about Josh's work and becoming more connected with their horse and more connected with themselves, I highly, highly, highly recommend checking out the YouTube channel and some of the other free resources that are available. And if you ever have the opportunity to audit or join Josh in a clinic, you will not regret it. That's for sure. Okay. Well, thanks again, Josh. We really appreciate you taking the time to spend with us today and share your passion, knowledge, and expertise. And thank you all for watching. As always, stay curious, stay unbridled, and we will see you on the next episode.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.